Welcome to Big Questions Episode 2. Last time we asked the question, does God exist? And we summarized some of the popular arguments in the negative, that God does not exist, and suggested some rebuttals to them. This time we will discuss some arguments in the affirmative, that God does exist. Number 1. Prophecy. Without getting into too much detail or specifics, there are a number of prophecies in the Bible that predict future events long before they actually occur. This is indicative of a supernatural author, since it would be impossible for any human. One of the major prophecies is that God would scatter Israel, the Jewish people, throughout the world for a long period of time, and then bring them back together as a nation again. This happened from 70 AD, when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and scattered the Jews, to 1945 AD, when the Jewish people became a nation again in the land of Israel. The chances of that coming true are so extremely small that it provides strong evidence for God's hand at work. Nowhere else in the history of humanity has anything like that ever happened before. No other people have kept their identity intact, scattered all over the world like the Jews did, never mind kept it intact and come back together to create a brand new nation, create that nation in the ancient homeland that their ancestors lived in thousands of years before, revive a language that had been dead for thousands of years to be their national language, take over their land in a series of incredible battles against mind-blowing odds, fighting an enemy with vastly superior numbers and equipment, defend it multiple times against the same kind of odds, and establish a very successful country and economy. Number 2. Jesus' resurrection. No historians dispute that Jesus was a historical figure and that he was executed by Pontius Pilate around the time referenced in the Bible. Given all the controversy surrounding his death, and the focus at the time from both the Roman and Jewish authorities, it's highly unlikely that Jesus' disciples would have been able to pull a fast one with his body and make it seem like he was resurrected. How easy would it have been for either power, who were both trying to stamp out the fledgling Christian religious movement, to simply produce the dead body of Jesus and prove them all wrong? But they couldn't, and it kept spreading until this small group of Galilee fishermen had converted the entire world. The chances of this happening is almost zero. They are competing with deeply entrenched paganism and the advanced thinking and rhetoric of Roman and Greek philosophers. And why would anyone believe in a resurrected carpenter from an unknown backwater of the Roman Empire anyway? They had no support from any major power or money, until much later when it became the official religion, of course. In fact, the very opposite. On both sides, the Jews and Romans both made it as difficult as possible for them. And what was their motive? Why would the initial group of disciples who were with Jesus and claimed to have seen him resurrected have any motive to spread it unless they were absolutely convinced it was true? Paul, who was one of their important preachers, even said, "If Christ is not raised, then our faith is in vain." So if they knew they hadn't really seen him and were just making it up, then they would have known their whole religion was a lie. And they were persecuted, tortured, jailed, their possessions taken, their land and houses stolen, their families ripped from their homes and left in the streets without food, shelter, or clothing. If they had really just stolen Jesus' body from the tomb, why suffer all this without any hope of gain? The Romans even had a law where if someone was being tried for being Christian, but stated publicly that they were not Christian, then they couldn't be tortured, or jailed, or had their possessions confiscated or anything. They had to be allowed to walk away scot-free. They couldn't be touched. How tempting would it be if you didn't truly believe, and were just in it for the money or some other motivation, to just say the words, "I'm not Christian," and walk free? Number 3. Existence of things or attributes that are more characteristic of a designer than chance or evolution. There are many things in the world that don't make sense from an evolutionary perspective. Things that are unselectable in terms of how natural selection chooses things. One example of this is the existence of beauty. How could survival of the fittest select for beauty? It doesn't provide any practical benefit. It's not going to make you more likely to outrun the predator. And why are we so drawn to beauty? Stopping to admire the sunset isn't going to help us catch our dinner. There are many things that most human beings find beautiful that have no beneficial use, or even counterproductive to survival. For example, there wouldn't be many people that don't find a snowy, frozen mountain range beautiful. and yet it's an environment that is extremely inhospitable to life. The same could be said for raging rivers, or powerful storms, or beautiful but dangerous animals. How would evolution select for people who were drawn to things that were not only unhelpful, but likely detrimental to survival? And there's so much beauty in the world around us. Where did it all come from? Is it the mark of a designer that loves beauty as much as we do? And are we drawn to it because it creates a sense of awe and wonder in us that is a spontaneous reaction to the work of our Creator? Number 4. The origin of life. Putting aside any discussion about evolution for now, how did life start in the first place, and where did organisms that could compete for survival with each other come from? There's 3 parts to this one. Part A. Origin of the universe. Most of the observations made in cosmology and physics point to the universe having a beginning. This is known as the singularity and poses a problem for atheistic scientists. How could you get something from nothing? If the universe is all we know, and everything in the universe had a beginning, then what was there before it began, and what got it started? Point B. The fine-tuning of the universe to allow for life. The universe has been fine-tuned from the beginning for life. The smallest variation in any of the many variables in all the complex laws and systems of the universe would result in the impossibility of life. So the probability of getting it right by chance is next to 0 and strongly points to an intelligent being designing it precisely for this purpose. Point C. The origin of the first living cell. The extraordinary amount of information in even the simplest life form is mind-boggling. The simplest cell is in fact a complex information storage, transmission, and processing system run by digital code that is expressed in an independent symbol convention. It's made up of a whole bunch of tiny machines and components that the cell would be unable to function without, and who are in turn protected by the cell's membrane and would not survive on their own. This is where the line between something that's very unlikely, and so would take billions of years to happen by chance, and something that is actually impossible gets crossed. If the cell needs the machines and components and DNA to exist, but they all need the cell to exist, then neither could exist on its own, and it's impossible it formed by chance. For chance to create something, you need random jostling and mixing for billions of years, in the hope that at some point you get a lucky combination. But if the components of the cell can't exist on their own, then they can't jostle and mix together, and so the cell can't be formed by chance. It had to be formed by a designer. Okay, thanks for listening again. Hopefully those 2 episodes did some justice to this massive topic. Please subscribe so you get notified when the next one comes out, and let us know if we missed anything.